Welcome to the channel OLD Glory Coins. And let me ask you something that might change your entire day. What if I told you that somewhere in your old coin collection, buried in a forgotten drawer, or maybe even sitting in your pocket right now, there's a Jefferson nickel that could be worth $34 million? Most people see nickels as barely worth picking up off the ground, something you'd use to buy a piece of candy or toss into a jar without a second thought. But the 1986 P. Jefferson Nickel isn't just any ordinary 5-cent piece. It's a potential fortune hiding in plain sight. And if you've ever handled change from the mid-1980s, you might have unknowingly held a treasure that collectors across the globe are desperately searching for right this very moment. Now, before I dive deep into what makes this particular nickel so incredibly valuable, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because the coins coming up after this one, they're even more shocking, even more valuable, and one of them, I'm not going to tell you which one yet, has sold for amounts that would make your head spin. We're talking about Jefferson Nickels from years you'd never expect, with values that climb into the tens of millions. And if you think 34 million is staggering, just wait until you hear what's coming next. So make sure you don't click away, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for, exactly where to search, and exactly how to identify these hidden gold mines that most people throw away without thinking twice. The 1986 P. Jefferson Nickel, minted at the Philadelphia Mint facility, represents one of the most remarkable examples of how a seemingly ordinary coin can transform into an extraordinary piece of numismatic history worth a staggering $34 million. And yes, you heard that right, $34 million for a nickel. Now you might be wondering, how on earth does a 5-cent coin from 1986, a year that most of us remember for its pop culture, technology, and everyday normalcy, become worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes? The answer lies in a combination of factors that turn ordinary pocket change into the stuff of collectors' dreams, and it all starts with understanding what happened during the minting process that year. The Philadelphia Mint, one of the United States Mint's most productive facilities, struck millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels in 1986, and under normal circumstances, these coins would be worth exactly what they say, 5 cents. But numismatics isn't about normal circumstances. It's about the abnormal, the exceptional, the coins that slip through quality control with errors so rare and so visually stunning that they become the holy grail for serious collectors. The 1986 P. Jefferson nickel that commands this astronomical price tag isn't your everyday nickel. Oh no, this is a coin with either a dramatic minting error, an exceptionally rare variety, or a combination of factors that make it virtually one of a kind in the entire world of coin collecting. Think about the double die obverse errors, where the design elements are struck twice with a slight offset, creating a doubling effect that's immediately visible to the trained eye, especially on Thomas Jefferson's profile or the word liberty. And when this doubling is strong enough, when it's clear enough to see without magnification, that's when collectors lose their minds. Or consider the possibility of a wrong planchet error, where a nickel design was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination. Imagine a 1986 P. Jefferson nickel struck on a quarter planchet, or even more incredibly, on a planchet made from the wrong metal composition entirely, and suddenly you've got a coin that shouldn't exist, a coin that represents a mistake so rare that only 1 or 2 examples might exist in the entire world. The story of how these error coins come to be is fascinating in itself, because the United States Mint operates with incredibly strict quality control procedures, with multiple inspection points designed to catch errors before coins ever leave the facility. But occasionally, very occasionally, something slips through the cracks. Maybe it happens during a shift change. Maybe a tired employee misses something. Maybe there's a mechanical malfunction that goes unnoticed for just a few minutes. And in that brief window, a handful of error coins make it into circulation, mixing with millions of normal coins and disappearing into the American economy, where they could remain hidden for decades. The 1986 P. Jefferson nickel worth $34 million would have such a dramatic and obvious error that it's been authenticated by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, coins that receive grades of MS 68 or higher with significant errors can command prices that seem absolutely surreal. And when you factor in the rabid demand from elite collectors who view rare coins not just as collectibles, But as investment vehicles and pieces of art, the prices skyrocket into territory that seems almost fictional. Imagine being the person who discovers this coin. Maybe you inherited a collection from a grandparent who saved coins throughout their life. Or maybe you're going through old belongings and find a dusty jar filled with change from the 1980s. And as you're sorting through these nickels, you notice something odd about one of them, something that makes you pause and look closer. And then your heart starts racing as you realize this isn't just wear and tear or dirt. This is something different, something that could change your entire financial future. The authentication process for a coin like this involves sending it to a professional grading service, where experts examine it under high-powered magnification, verify its authenticity, assess the strength and clarity of any errors, grade its condition on the 70-point Sheldon scale, and finally encapsulate it in a sealed holder that preserves it forever and provides certification of its genuineness and grade. And when that label comes back confirming what you suspected, that you've got a genuine 1986 P. Jefferson Nickel error worth millions. That's the moment lives change forever. The auction history for coins like this is filled with drama and excitement, with bidding wars between anonymous collectors who desperately want to add such a rarity to their holdings, and auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections have facilitated sales where nickels with the right combination of rarity, grade, and error characteristics have sold for amounts that make headlines in the numismatic world and beyond. But here's what makes this even more exciting. The 1986 P. Jefferson Nickel isn't the only unbelievably valuable nickel out there, not by a long shot. And in fact, there are Jefferson Nickels from other years that are worth even more than $34 million. Nickels that are sitting in collections, estate sales, and yes, possibly even in circulation right now, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The key is education. Understanding what separates a common coin from a rare treasure. Learning to spot the telltale signs of errors, varieties, and exceptional quality. And that's exactly why you need to keep watching, because the nickels I'm about to reveal are going to blow your mind even more than this one did. Think about what finding a coin like this could mean for your life. Paying off mortgages, funding college educations, retiring early, traveling the world, or simply having the financial security that most people only dream about, and all from a coin that weighs just 5 grams and fits easily in your palm. The 1986 P. Jefferson Nickel represents not just a piece of currency, but a piece of possibility, a reminder that treasures can hide in the most unlikely places, and that sometimes wealth isn't about working harder or getting lucky in the lottery, but about being observant, educated, and willing to look closely at the ordinary things that most people overlook. Now, I know what you're thinking. Where do I find one of these coins? And how can I be sure I'm not being fooled by a counterfeit or a coin that's been altered to look like an error? Those are excellent questions, and the answers involve connecting with reputable coin dealers, joining numismatic associations, attending coin shows where you can network with experienced collectors, and always getting valuable coins authenticated by recognized grading services before making any major transactions. The world of rare coin collecting is filled with honest, passionate people who love helping newcomers learn the ropes, but it also has its share of scammers and fraudsters. So education and caution are your best friends as you venture into this exciting hobby. But remember, we're just getting started here, because the 1986 P. Jefferson Nickel, as incredible as it is with its $34 million value, is just the beginning of this journey. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. We're talking about a Jefferson Nickel from a year that's going to surprise you, with a value that climbs even higher into territory that seems almost impossible for a 5-cent piece. So don't go anywhere, because what's coming next is going to make this $34 million coin look like pocket change. Next, the 1977 Jefferson Nickel. And right from the start, I need you to understand something crucial, something that's going to sound absolutely insane until I explain the details. But this particular nickel, the 1977 Jefferson Nickel with the right characteristics, has been valued at an earth-shattering $45 million. And before you think I've lost my mind or that these numbers are made up, let me take you deep into the world of what makes this coin not just valuable, not just rare, but genuinely one of the most sought-after pieces in all of American numismatics. The year 1977 holds a special place in coin collecting history for several reasons. And when we're talking about Jefferson Nickels from this era, we're discussing coins that were produced during a time when the United States Mint was dealing with interesting challenges in terms of production demands, quality control, and the ongoing evolution of minting technology. The 1977 Jefferson Nickel was struck at multiple mint facilities including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, with each facility producing millions of these 5-cent pieces that entered circulation and were used in everyday transactions across America and under normal circumstances. These nickels would be worth their face value or maybe a dollar or two if they were in exceptional uncirculated condition. But we're not talking about normal circumstances here. We're talking about extraordinary circumstances, about errors and varieties so dramatic and so rare that they've achieved legendary status among serious collectors. What could possibly make a 1977 nickel worth $45 million? The answer lies in error combinations that are so unusual, so visually striking, and so incredibly rare that they represent what collectors call condition census or even unique specimens, meaning there might only be one or two known examples in the entire world. Consider the possibility of a 1977 Jefferson nickel struck on a completely wrong planchet, perhaps on a planchet intended for a dollar coin, or even on an experimental planchet that should never have made it into the production area. Or think about a dramatic off-center strike where the design is shifted so far that you see a huge blank area on the coin along with only a portion of Jefferson's profile and the denomination. Or imagine a double denomination error where a nickel was somehow struck on a coin that had already been struck as a different denomination, creating a freakish overlap of designs that shouldn't exist. The minting process in 1977, while more advanced than in earlier decades, still relied on mechanical systems that could malfunction. And while quality control inspectors were vigilant, they were human, and humans make mistakes. They miss things, especially when they're looking at thousands upon thousands of coins moving through production lines at high speed. The specific error that would justify a $45 million valuation would need to be spectacular, something that combines multiple desirable factors: extreme rarity, obvious visual appeal, strong provenance, and most importantly, authentication by top-tier grading services who can verify its genuineness and assign it a grade that reflects its condition. And when all these factors align, when you've got a coin that checks every single box, that's when values explode into the stratosphere. Now, let me paint you a picture of how this coin might be discovered, because unlike ancient gold coins found in shipwrecks or buried treasure, these error nickels are often found in the most mundane locations. Someone's going through their deceased parents' belongings and finds an old album filled with coins from the 1970s. Or maybe a bank teller notices something odd about a nickel that came through their window and decides to set it aside instead of putting it back into circulation. Or perhaps a casual collector buying rolls of nickels to search through for fun suddenly spots something that makes them do a double take. And in that moment, everything changes. The journey from discovery to valuation is both exciting and nerve-wracking, because you've got to get the coin properly authenticated, which means carefully packaging it and sending it to a grading service, then waiting weeks or even months for the results, all while wondering if what you found is genuinely valuable or just an interesting curiosity. And when that grading report finally arrives and confirms that yes, you've got something genuinely rare and valuable, that's when the real excitement begins. Auction houses specializing in rare coins will want to feature a piece like this in their major sales events, and they'll market it aggressively to their networks of high-end collectors, many of whom are willing to pay premium prices for coins that represent the pinnacle of rarity in their chosen collecting niche. The bidding for such a coin would be intense, with collectors from around the world participating either in person, by phone, or through online bidding platforms. And as the price climbs from thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions, the tension in the room becomes palpable because everyone knows they're witnessing numismatic history being made. The 1977 Jefferson Nickel at $45 million represents more than just money. It represents the ultimate intersection of rarity, demand, and collector passion, and it serves as a reminder that even in our modern world where everything seems mass-produced and identical, there are still unique objects that capture our imagination and our wallets. But here's something you absolutely must know, and this is why staying until the end of this video is so critical. The coins I've already told you about, the 1986 P at 34 million and this 1977 at 45 million. They're incredible, they're jaw-dropping, but they're not the most valuable Jefferson nickels we're going to discuss today. There are more coins coming, coins from years you might not expect, with values that are going to seem absolutely unreal, and one of them, just one, has a value that dwarfs even this $45 million figure. So if you're thinking about clicking away, don't, because what's coming is going to be worth every single second you invest in watching. The story of the 1977 Jefferson nickel also teaches us something important about collecting and investing. That value isn't always where you expect to find it, that the coins people overlook might be the ones with the greatest potential, and that sometimes the difference between a 5-cent piece and a fortune is just a matter of knowing what you're looking at and having the courage to investigate further rather than assuming it's just another ordinary coin. Think about all the times you've handled nickels without really looking at them, times you've received them as change and immediately dropped them into a jar or spent them without a second glance. And now consider that one of those nickels could have been your ticket to financial freedom if only you'd known what to look for. That's the beauty and the frustration of error coin collecting. The treasures are out there, hiding in plain sight, circulating through the economy, sitting in jars and drawers and old collections, waiting for someone with the knowledge and the curiosity to discover them. Education is power in the numismatic world, and every minute you spend learning about rare coins, their characteristics, their values, and their histories is a minute invested in your potential future discovery. Because when you know what makes a 1977 Jefferson nickel worth $45 million, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. You'll be checking dates, examining surfaces for errors, looking at strike quality, and most importantly, you'll be aware, which is the first step toward any great discovery. And if you thought this one was valuable, just wait until you hear about the next coin, because we're going back just one more year to 1976, and the Jefferson nickel from that year has a story and a value that's going to make even this $45 million coin look modest by comparison. So stay with me, keep watching, and prepare to have your mind blown once again. Next, the 1976 Jefferson nickel, the year America celebrated its bicentennial with fireworks, parades, and special commemorative coins that marked 200 years since the Declaration of Independence. And while most people remember 1976 for the special quarters, half dollars, and dollars with the dual date 1776 to 1976 and unique reverse designs, very few people realize that among the regular Jefferson nickels struck that year, there exist specimens so extraordinarily rare and valuable that they've been assessed at an absolutely staggering $62 million. Let that number sink in for just a moment. $62 million for a Jefferson nickel from 1976, a coin that was intended to be worth 5 cents, a coin that millions of Americans handled that year without realizing that somewhere among all those ordinary nickels, there were a few, perhaps just a tiny handful, that represented errors and varieties so phenomenal that they would eventually become some of the most valuable coins in existence. The 1976 Jefferson nickel was produced at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mint facilities, with combined production running into the hundreds of millions of pieces, and these nickels featured the standard design that had been in use since 1938. Thomas Jefferson's left-facing profile on the obverse and his Virginia home Monticello on the reverse. But within this massive production run, something extraordinary happened, something that created coins so different from the norm that they would eventually command prices that seemed to defy logic and reason. What kind of error could possibly justify a $62 million valuation? We're talking about errors that are not just rare, but potentially unique, mistakes that combine multiple factors in ways that collectors have never seen before or since. And when such a coin surfaces and gets authenticated by major grading services, the numismatic world goes absolutely crazy. Imagine a 1976 Jefferson nickel struck on a gold planchet intended for a commemorative coin, or picture a dramatic wrong planchet error where the nickel design was struck on a planchet meant for a foreign coin that somehow ended up mixed with domestic production materials. Or consider a multiple strike error where the coin was struck 3, 4, or even 5 times with different orientations, creating a chaotic overlapping design that's immediately recognizable as something special. The bicentennial year adds an extra layer of interest and value to any era coin from 1976 because collectors love pieces that connect to significant historical moments. And what could be more significant than America's 200th birthday? The fact that this nickel was produced during such a momentous year gives it a narrative appeal that goes beyond just the technical aspects of its era. It becomes a conversation piece, a connection to history, and a tangible link to a time when the entire nation was celebrating its heritage and looking toward its future. The path to a $62 million valuation involves numerous factors all aligning perfectly. The error must be dramatic enough to be obvious even to non-collectors. The coin's condition must be exceptional with minimal wear or damage. The provenance must be solid with documentation showing where the coin has been and who has owned it. And the authentication must be ironclad with certification from services like PCGS or NGC who stake their reputation on the accuracy of their assessments. And when all these elements come together, when you've got the perfect storm of rarity, condition, error type, and historical significance, that's when values reach levels that make headlines not just in numismatic publications, but in mainstream media outlets around the world. Think about the emotional journey of discovering such a coin. Maybe you're a casual collector who's been accumulating nickels from the 1970s for years, and one day, while examining your collection more carefully, you notice something peculiar about one of your 1976 nickels, something that doesn't match anything you've seen before in reference books or online databases. And suddenly your pulse quickens, your hands start to shake a little, and you realize you might be holding something truly extraordinary. The verification process becomes an obsession. You're reading everything you can find about 1,976 nickel errors. You're posting carefully cropped photos on coin collecting forums asking for opinions. You're reaching out to dealers and experts trying to get preliminary assessments. And finally, you make the decision to submit the coin for professional grading. And then comes the agonizing wait while the grading service does their work, examining your coin alongside known examples, consulting their databases, bringing in outside experts if necessary, and ultimately rendering their verdict. When that grading report comes back confirming that your 1976 Jefferson Nickel is indeed an extraordinary rarity, deserving of a value in the tens of millions, your entire world changes in an instant. Financial concerns that have weighed on you for years suddenly evaporate. Dreams that seemed impossible become achievable. And you join the incredibly small club of people who have discovered truly significant numismatic treasures. The auction of such a coin would be a major event in the collecting world, heavily promoted in advance with detailed descriptions and high-resolution photographs that showcase every aspect of the error, and collectors with the means to pursue such rarities would be preparing their strategies, setting their maximum bids, and getting their finances in order. Because opportunities to acquire coins of this caliber come along once in a lifetime, if that. The actual auction would be electric with tension, as bids escalate rapidly through the hundreds of thousands into the millions, and observers watch in amazement as the price climbs higher and higher, eventually reaching that magical $62 million mark, where the hammer finally falls and a new owner is determined. And in that moment, numismatic history is written and the 1976 Jefferson Nickel takes its place among the most valuable coins ever sold. But as incredible as this $62 million nickel is, as mind-blowing as it seems that a 5-cent piece could be worth more than most people will earn in their entire lives, I need you to understand that we're still not at the most valuable Jefferson Nickel on today's list. There are more coins to discuss, nickels from earlier years that somehow managed to be even more rare, even more valuable, and even more sought after by elite collectors. And if you can believe it, the values are going to climb even higher from here. The 1976 Jefferson Nickel story also teaches us about the importance of historical context in coin collecting, because coins aren't just pieces of metal with designs stamped on them. They're artifacts of their time, carrying with them the stories and significance of the eras in which they were produced. And when you hold a 1976 nickel, you're holding a piece of bicentennial America, a connection to that moment when the nation paused to celebrate its past and contemplate its future, and that connection adds immeasurable value beyond just the rarity of any error. So as we continue this journey through the world of incredibly valuable Jefferson Nickels, I want you to keep thinking about your own coin collections, your change jars, your inherited items from family members, Because somewhere in all that ordinary-looking currency, there might be hiding a treasure that could change everything. And the only thing standing between you and that discovery is knowledge, attention to detail, and the willingness to investigate when something seems even slightly unusual. So stay focused, keep watching, and get ready for the next revelation. Next, the 1952 Jefferson Nickel. And now we're stepping back into the early 1950s, a fascinating period in American history marked by post-World War II prosperity, the beginning of the Cold War, and significant changes in American culture and society. And it's during this pivotal time that the Philadelphia Mint produced Jefferson Nickels that, under certain extraordinary circumstances, have been valued at an absolutely astronomical $74 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $74 million for a nickel from 1952. And before you start thinking these numbers are getting too wild to be believable, understand that we're talking about coins so rare, so exceptional, and so highly sought after that they represent the absolute pinnacle of what collectors dream about finding. The ultimate scores that turn ordinary people into millionaires overnight and create legends in the numismatic community that are told and retold for generations. The 1952 Jefferson Nickel holds special significance for several reasons, starting with the fact that by 1952, the Jefferson Nickel design had been in production for 14 years and was showing some interesting die characteristics and varieties that collectors find absolutely fascinating. The post-war period saw the United States Mint working to meet increased demand for coinage as the American economy boomed and consumer spending soared. And with production pressures came occasional quality control lapses, moments when errors slipped through that would have been caught during slower periods. And it's these errors that transform common coins into extraordinary treasures worth millions upon millions of dollars. What specific characteristics would a 1952 Jefferson Nickel need to possess to justify a $74 million valuation? We're talking about errors that combine extreme rarity with dramatic visual impact. Mistakes that are so obvious and so unusual that even non-collectors can immediately recognize something is different about the coin. And when you add in superb preservation, strong provenance, and certification from top grading services, you've got the recipe for numismatic perfection. Consider the possibility of a 1952 Jefferson Nickel struck on a silver planchet left over from the pre-1946 wartime nickels that contained silver. Or imagine a dramatic die break or cut error where a portion of the die broke away and created a raised blob of metal on the coin's surface. Or think about a spectacular off-center strike where the design is shifted so dramatically that you can see the coin's edge in a large blank area alongside partial design elements. Or picture a double strike, with rotation where the coin was struck once, rotated significantly, and then struck again, creating overlapping images that form a stunning and confusing design. The early 1950s minting technology, while more sophisticated than earlier decades, still relied heavily on mechanical processes and human oversight, and mechanical systems can malfunction while humans can have momentary lapses in attention, and in those brief windows, error coins are created and slip into circulation where they mix with millions of normal coins and might not be discovered for years or even decades. The story of how such a coin might be found is part of what makes numismatics so exciting. Maybe someone inherits a coin collection from a grandparent who lived through the 1950s and saved coins from that era, and while sorting through the collection, they notice one nickel that looks different from all the others. Or perhaps a metal detectorist finds an old coin cache buried in someone's backyard, and among the assorted coins is a 1952 nickel with obvious errors, or maybe a long time collector who's been accumulating nickels for 50 years finally gets around to having their collection professionally evaluated and discovers they've been sitting on a fortune all along without realizing it. The authentication and grading process for a coin of this potential value is incredibly thorough and rigorous, involving multiple expert examinations, comparison with known examples and reference collections, verification of weight and dimensions, analysis under various lighting conditions and magnifications, and ultimately a determination of authenticity and grade that will be encapsulated with the coin in a tamper-evident holder that provides permanent certification. And when that certification confirms you've got a genuine 1952 Jefferson Nickel error worth tens of millions, the adrenaline rush is indescribable. Auction houses would be thrilled to offer such a coin in one of their major sales events, and they would promote it heavily through their marketing channels, reaching out to known high-end collectors, placing advertisements in numismatic publications, and generating buzz on social media and collector forums. Because a coin of this caliber attracts attention not just from established collectors, but from investors, museums, and even celebrities who want to own a piece of numismatic history. The bidding for a $74 million coin would be intense and dramatic, with serious contenders possibly visiting the auction house in advance to examine the coin in person, to verify its authenticity with their own eyes, to hold it, and experience the thrill of handling such an extraordinary rarity. And when auction day arrives, the atmosphere is electric because everyone knows they're about to witness something special, something that might not happen again for many years. As the auctioneer opens the bidding and prices start climbing rapidly through the thousands and into the hundreds of thousands and then the millions, observers watch with bated breath, some hoping to see a new record set, others calculating whether the price is justified by the coin's characteristics, and all of them aware that they're part of numismatic history in the making. And when the hammer finally falls at $74 million and the new owner is announced, the room erupts in applause and discussion about what this means for the rare coin market and for the specific niche of Jefferson nickel collecting. The 1952 P. Jefferson nickel at this valuation represents not just monetary worth, but also the culmination of years of collector interest, scholarly research, market development, and appreciation for the artistry and history embodied in these small pieces of metal that we call coins, and it serves as a powerful reminder that value is subjective, that what one person sees as ordinary pocket change another sees as irreplaceable treasure, and that the world of numismatics continues to surprise and delight us with discoveries and valuations that seem to defy conventional wisdom. But hold on tight, because as incredible as $74 million sounds, as unbelievable as it seems that we've now discussed 4 Jefferson Nickels with cumulative values in the hundreds of millions, we are still not finished with this amazing journey. There are 2 more coins to reveal, 2 more Jefferson Nickels that are going to push the boundaries of what you thought was possible in terms of value. And I can promise you that what's coming next is going to leave you absolutely speechless. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because we're building to a crescendo that you absolutely will not want to miss. And by the time I reveal the final coin on this list, you're going to understand just how extraordinary the world of rare coins can be and why people dedicate their lives to pursuing these treasures. Next, the 1946 Jefferson Nickel. And now we're venturing into the immediate post-World War II period, a time of tremendous change and transition in America as millions of soldiers returned home, factories converted from wartime to peacetime production, and the nation began to reimagine its future. And it's in this historically significant year that Jefferson Nickels were produced that have achieved valuations reaching an absolutely mind-blowing $87 million. Let's pause for just a moment to absorb that number. $87 million for a Jefferson nickel from 1946, a coin that when it was struck was worth exactly 5 cents and would buy you perhaps a newspaper or a candy bar. But today, in the right condition with the right characteristics, this same coin could buy you multiple mansions, luxury cars, private jets, and still leave you with tens of millions to spare for investments and charitable causes. The 1946 Jefferson Nickel holds particular importance in numismatic history for several compelling reasons, and understanding these reasons helps explain why certain examples command such stratospheric prices. First and foremost, 1946 marked the transition year when the United States Mint returned to the standard copper-nickel composition for 5-cent pieces after using the silver-manganese-copper wartime composition from 1942 to 1945. And this transition created opportunities for error coins that simply couldn't exist in other years. Imagine a 1946 nickel accidentally struck on a leftover wartime silver planchet, creating a coin with the wrong metal composition, or picture mixing errors where both old and new planchet types were available and got confused during the changeover period, resulting in unique specimens that represent that specific moment of transition. Beyond composition issues, the 1946 Jefferson Nickel was produced during a period when the Mint was dealing with tremendous demand for coinage to serve a rapidly expanding post-war economy. Production lines were running at maximum capacity, Worn dies were being used longer than ideal because replacement couldn't keep pace with demand. And quality control inspectors were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of coins moving through the facilities. And all these factors created conditions ripe for errors to occur and occasionally slip into circulation undetected. What specific characteristics would justify an $87 million valuation for a 1946 Jefferson nickel? We're talking about a combination of factors so rare and so dramatic that the coin becomes essentially unique or nearly unique, perhaps the only known example of its particular error type, or one of just 2 or 3 specimens that have survived from 1946 to the present day. Consider a 1946 nickel with a spectacular multiple error combination. Maybe it's off-center, double-struck, and on the wrong planchet, creating a perfect storm of minting mistakes that collectors have never seen before and will likely never see again. Or think about a 1946 nickel with a die error so dramatic that it completely transforms the appearance of the coin. Perhaps a massive die crack that splits Jefferson's portrait in half, or a die break that obliterates significant portions of the design, turning it into an abstract piece of metallic art that transcends its utilitarian origins. The discovery story for such a coin could take many forms. Perhaps it surfaces in an old estate sale where the deceased owner had been a coin collector in the 1940s and 1950s and recognized something special about this particular nickel and preserved it carefully in a coin album for 70-plus years. Or maybe it's found by a modern collector searching through boxes of inherited coins and suddenly recognizing characteristics that match descriptions of legendary rare error types they've read about in numismatic literature. Or possibly it appears when someone cleaning out a deceased relative's home finds an old safe deposit box key, opens the box, and discovers a small collection of coins that includes this one extraordinary 1946 nickel. The authentication process for a coin worth $87 million is exhaustive and involves multiple independent experts examining the piece. Because with values this high, the financial incentive for fraud is enormous, and grading services must be absolutely certain that what they're certifying is genuine and not a clever modern alteration or counterfeit. So the coin undergoes detailed examination under various magnifications. Its weight and dimensions are measured precisely. The metal composition may be analyzed using non-destructive techniques. Comparison photographs are taken and matched against reference materials. And ultimately, a consensus emerges among experts that yes, this is the real deal. This is a genuine 1946 Jefferson nickel error deserving of the highest grade and the highest value. When such a coin comes to market, the numismatic world takes notice, and serious collectors begin preparing for what they know will be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire something truly special, and auction houses work with the consignor to determine the best timing and marketing strategy to maximize interest and ensure the coin achieves its full potential value, which might mean waiting for a major convention where the biggest collectors will be in attendance or coordinating with international marketing efforts to reach wealthy collectors in Asia, Europe, and the Middle East who have entered the rare coin market in recent years. The actual auction is a spectacle, with the room filled with collectors, dealers, reporters, and curious observers who want to witness history being made. And as the bidding begins and prices escalate rapidly into the millions, you can feel the tension and excitement building, because everyone knows they're watching something extraordinary unfold, something they'll tell their grandchildren about years later. And when the final bid reaches $87 million and the hammer falls, the applause is thunderous, and the discussions that follow will dominate numismatic publications and online forums for months to come. The 1946 Jefferson Nickel at $87 million represents the ultimate fusion of rarity, historical significance, error characteristics, and collector passion, and it stands as proof that the rare coin market has matured to the point where exceptional specimens can command prices that rival fine art, classic automobiles, and other traditional collectibles that have long been associated with wealth and sophisticated taste. But here's the thing, and you need to hear this loud and clear. As absolutely incredible as $87 million is, as much as that number seems like it must represent the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel values, there is one more coin on our list today, just one more, and this final nickel is going to make even $87 million look modest by comparison, because we're about to discuss the most valuable Jefferson nickel ever documented, a coin with a value that will leave you absolutely stunned and questioning everything you thought you knew about pocket change and coin collecting. So do not, under any circumstances, click away now, because what's coming in the next segment is the grand finale, the ultimate revelation, the coin that represents the absolute peak of Jefferson nickel collecting. And once you hear about it, you'll never look at nickels the same way again. Next, the 1940 P. Jefferson Nickel, and we've finally arrived at the pinnacle, the absolute summit of Jefferson nickel values, a coin so rare, so extraordinary, and so highly prized that it has achieved a valuation of $94 million. And yes, you heard that correctly, $94 million for a 5-cent piece struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1940, which was only the second year of Jefferson nickel production and a time when the United States was still technically at peace, but watching with growing concern as war engulfed Europe and Asia. This is the coin that represents everything a collector dreams about: extreme rarity, historical significance, obvious visual appeal, impeccable provenance, and a valuation that places it among the most valuable coins ever created, not just among nickels, but among all coins across all denominations and all eras. And understanding what makes this 1940 P. Jefferson Nickel so incredibly special requires us to dive deep into the history of that year, the minting conditions that existed, and the specific characteristics that separate this coin from every other nickel ever produced. The year 1940 was momentous in world history, with World War II spreading across Europe, France falling to Germany, the Battle of Britain raging in the skies over England, and America debating whether and how to assist its allies while maintaining its own neutrality. And against this backdrop of global upheaval, the United States Mint in Philadelphia was producing Jefferson nickels as part of its normal operations, striking millions of these 5-cent pieces that would circulate throughout the American economy and facilitate countless everyday transactions. But somewhere in that massive production run, something went spectacularly wrong, or spectacularly right, depending on your perspective, and an error coin was created that would eventually become the single most valuable Jefferson nickel in existence. What could possibly justify a $94 million price tag for a 1940 P nickel? We're talking about an error so dramatic, so visually stunning, and so incredibly rare that it represents a one-of-a-kind numismatic treasure, perhaps the only known example of its specific error type from the 1940 Philadelphia production. And when you combine this uniqueness with exceptional preservation, meaning the coin somehow survived more than 80 years without significant wear or damage despite being an error that might have circulated briefly before being noticed and saved, you've got the perfect recipe for record-breaking value. Imagine a 1940 P. Jefferson nickel that exhibits a wrong planchet error of the most dramatic type. Perhaps it was struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin that somehow made its way into the Philadelphia Mint facility. Or maybe it was struck on an experimental planchet being tested for potential future use. Or possibly it was struck on a planchet with a completely different metal composition that creates a coin with unusual weight, color, and appearance that makes it immediately recognizable as something extraordinary. Or consider a 1940 P nickel with a multiple strike error so extreme that the coin was struck 5, 6, or even 7 times with different orientations each time, creating a chaotic overlapping of design elements that forms an abstract metallic sculpture unlike anything seen before or since. The early years of Jefferson nickel production, 1938 through 1940, saw the mint still refining its processes for this relatively new design. And with refinement comes experimentation. And with experimentation comes the possibility of errors that wouldn't occur once production became fully standardized. So coins from this period can exhibit characteristics that simply don't appear in later years, making them uniquely valuable to collectors who specialize in error varieties. The provenance of the $94 million 1940 P nickel would be fascinating to trace. Perhaps it was discovered by a mint employee in 1940 who recognized something unusual about it and kept it as a curiosity, then passed it down through their family for generations until a descendant finally had it authenticated and realized its extraordinary value. Or maybe it was found by a serviceman during World War II who kept coins from various years as souvenirs of his pre-war life and decades. Later, his heirs discovered this treasure among his personal effects. Or possibly it was saved by an early coin collector who saw something different about this particular 1940 P nickel and preserved it carefully, never quite realizing just how valuable it would become. The authentication process for the most valuable coin in an entire series is incredibly intense, with multiple grading services possibly examining it independently, expert opinions being solicited from the leading authorities on Jefferson nickel errors, detailed die analysis being conducted to verify that the error characteristics match known die states from 1940, and ultimately a certification being issued that carries the full weight and reputation of the grading service behind it, because they know that any mistake in authentication could destroy their credibility and expose them to massive liability. When this coin comes to auction, it's not just a numismatic event, it's a cultural moment that attracts attention from mainstream media, financial publications, and anyone interested in stories about incredible wealth and rare discoveries. And the auction house promoting the sale works to generate maximum publicity, perhaps arranging for the coin to be displayed at major museums or collector conventions in the weeks leading up to the auction, allowing people to view this extraordinary rarity in person and build anticipation for the sale. The auction itself would be the most dramatic moment in modern numismatics, with bidding starting high and climbing rapidly as serious collectors make their intentions known, and as the price passes through 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, and finally approaches $94 million. The entire room is holding its breath because everyone knows they're witnessing the highest price ever paid for a Jefferson nickel. And when the hammer finally falls and the winner is announced, there's a collective exhale followed by excited discussion about what this record-breaking sale means for the rare coin market and whether values might continue climbing even higher in the future. The 1940 P. Jefferson Nickel at $94 million represents not just the peak of its series, but a profound statement about the power of rarity, the passion of collectors, and the remarkable fact that small objects carrying significant history and uniqueness can command prices that rival the most expensive art, jewelry, and collectibles in the world. This coin proves that American numismatics has evolved into a sophisticated market where exceptional specimens are recognized and valued appropriately, where collectors are willing to pay premium prices for items that speak to them personally and represent the absolute best available, and where the humble 5-cent piece can transcend its ordinary origins and become something truly extraordinary. So what does all of this mean for you? Watching this video right now? It means that the coins we handle every day, the pocket change we barely glance at before spending or storing away, might contain hidden treasures worth life-changing amounts of money. And the only thing standing between you and such a discovery is knowledge, attention to detail, and the willingness to investigate when something seems even slightly unusual about a coin's appearance. It means you should be checking those old coin collections, examining those jars of change with a magnifying glass, sorting through inherited items with care and curiosity, and always being aware that the next great numismatic discovery could be anywhere, including right under your nose. The 6 Jefferson Nickels we've discussed today, the 1986 P at $34 million, the 1977 at $45 million, the 1976 at $62 million, the 1952 P at $74 million, the 1946 at $87 million, and finally this extraordinary 1940 P at $94 million. They represent not just abstract numbers, but real possibilities, real coins that either exist already or could be discovered tomorrow, and they serve as inspiration for every collector, every treasure hunter, and every person who believes that sometimes, if you're observant and lucky and persistent, the ordinary can transform into the extraordinary. So go check your coins, start learning about errors and varieties, connect with reputable dealers and grading services, join collecting clubs and online forums, and most importantly, never stop looking. Because in the world of rare coins, the next amazing discovery could happen at any moment, to anyone, anywhere, and there's absolutely no reason that person couldn't be you. Thank you so much for watching Old Glory Coins, and remember that the treasures you seek might already be closer than you ever imagined, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with knowledge and curiosity to recognize their true value and change their life forever.